Hey friends, today I have fellow business owner and fitness professional with me, Chris Gordon, who owns KNX Elite Fitness here in Knoxville, Iowa. And we are talking mindset still. Chris has a unique background with working with collegiate athletes and has a unique take on mindset and how attitude comes into play. We also talk about how patience and consistency play a big role in mindset. Listen in on our conversation and head over to CairnYogaWellness.com. That's CAIRN Yoga Wellness to get the show notes for today's episode as well. Welcome to Health, Harmony, and Happiness with Kathy. I'm your host, Kathy Stricker. In my personal life, I am a wife to a dedicated law enforcement officer and mama to 3 lively littles. I'm an adamantine yoga teacher, health coach, community betterment advocate, and wellness enthusiast. But what I really like doing is connecting others with tools and resources that bring about health, harmony, and happiness. Whatever this looks like to you, I'm here to offer my own insights and tools from others that allow you to realize your full potential to live mindfully as your authentic best self. Allow me to be a guide in discovering what works for you. Hi, Chris. How are you today?
I'm good, Kathy.
Thanks for taking the time to be on the podcast with me today. We are talking mindset, and we're in the midst of a series that I'm getting different people's takes on what that means to them, what that means to maybe their business or their service that they may be offering. So let's talk about it with you. You own a gym in town. We're in a small town. We have about 7,000 people in our town, and you work with them, though, on mindset, which is a huge, crucial thing, especially working with the populations that you and I see every day and that we work with. What does mindset mean to you?
This is one of the things I think that, and I just had a conversation the other day, was mindset is kind of also one of those buzzword type things out there that people are talking about.
Absolutely.
It's a thing. And mindset coaches and yada, yada, yada. Well, simply when I look at mindset, it's your attitude. That's all it is. You either positive or negative mindset or positive, negative attitude. To kind of, dig deeper on that, mindset could also be looked at as your attitude towards your actions. So, and that's kind of, actually, that's really where I stand with that thing is,
Talk more about that. What do you mean by that?
So, Carol Dweck, if you've ever read any of her stuff with the growth mindset, she's got some really, profound things within that stuff. And most of it's applicable to like the education world because of learning.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But, and I know this just probably, and if you take I can take some of my own examples from past too is, well, I was just born that way, so this is the best it's going to be. I don't have that, right? So what I've kind of worked with, and it's not like we don't spend a ton of time with it when it comes to, oh, you can be more than what you think you are type scenario, because I work with adults, and I don't think they need that conversation that you would have with a 7-year-old. But
right.
I think it's important that they also have that realization that just because they couldn't at one point doesn't mean they can't now. And
right.
I think that's where a lot of people, I think that's where they stagnate and where they don't thrive is they think that I didn't do it when I was 17. I can't do it when I'm 47. It's a hard pill to swallow for some people.
Yeah. So how do you go about changing that perception?
I speak a lot to patients, and that's really in today's society is not something that they don't want to hear that. They just, um, most people that we work with or that, they want to be there now, um,
Or yesterday.
or yesterday, or, and for me, it's kind of hard, in a population we work with and with the industry that I work within. um, Weight losses seems to be like the main thing, or it has been the main thing for years upon years, and that's when you start seeing like the franchise gyms, the big gyms, the diet commercials, those guys out there, and they're offering like the 6 weeks to the new you type thing, and that people get that put in their head of, well, then I can have what I just have to put forth, 6 weeks. That's
Right.
all it's going to take, and then I'm going to be like, it'll be fixed. Everything that I've done that I've destroyed myself the last 30 years, but in 6 weeks I can fix it all.
Right.
And we have to have that conversation when they come in is I can't do it in 6 weeks, and trying to be really, really real with people. It's surprising there are people that have elected not to work with us because of that conversation is I can't do that for you in 6 weeks. I can't do that for you in 6 months. It might even take 6 years to get to where it is you want to go. Can you be patient with that? And can you trust us during the thing? And I think that's where there's a huge disconnect between what I do and even you do with what the public wants.
Absolutely, with what they see and what they think. And it's it's like they want a quick fix now and they're not willing to wait for it. And when you have the conversation like that, you have to phrase it in, this is a lifestyle change.
Mm-hmm.
And your lifestyle didn't get here in 6 weeks. So why would it change in 6 weeks? It's a lifelong journey. And I think that's a very similar message that you and I both work to bring out there to the public and bring out there to those people that we talk to, that we engage with, and that we're teaching every day. There is no quick fix. Just like you said, it takes work, and patience is a huge thing. A huge thing. So when you tell people, well, it's going to take patience, and they walk out the door because they're not going to have the patience, what about those people who are staying and who are working? How do you communicate that and continue to push them and let them see and feel the benefits that what they're doing is empowering?
That's a really good question because I don't know. I honestly I don't have a really good answer for that. But from what I can take is, and we're up now with, I have to go back over records and look at tenure with most, but our longest clients have been here over 6 years. Um, the conversations that I have with those, and I kind of, they're not as often as they should be, but they're the conversations that are, they've adapted themselves to now to where it's not so they're not so focused on goals as they are as they understand the importance of what it is that they're doing, is it's part of their lifestyle now. And I
Yeah,
think the most difficult thing that we have when it comes to newer people is trying to get them to adopt that same mentality. Is it's great to have goals, and you have to have those. Not everybody does. Not everybody needs to. It's just what they do. It's like brushing your teeth. Well,
right.
I exercise. But some people, in order for them to have some kind of motivation to continue with what they're doing, they have to be chasing something.
Right.
But some of my longest tenured people, we've had maybe two talks about goals and things like that. And what it really comes down to is it's not so much the exercise and what's happening with them in a physical aspect. It's who they have become over the last 5 or 6 or 7 years by doing what they do in here. And I think that's a testament but it's so subjective. Like you
Absolutely.
can't measure that stuff. You can't market that stuff. It's just one of those things where, and you don't even know how to take that and like, you can't articulate that into words of, oh, but they just feel like a better person.
I
Well,
know. They
yay.
they You have to experience it for yourself in order to be able to do that. But when someone walks through the door and says, "Well, I don't have the patience to work longer than 6 weeks," but they're still expecting that change, there's no way they're going to be able to feel that. I mean, maybe after a week or two they're feeling pretty good. It's like you want to
Yeah.
bottle that initial energy because you hit this plateau then, and then they're like, "Oh, it's getting hard. It's getting hard to maintain." And this is a lifelong struggle with every person in the fitness industry. I think that's why
Oh,
it's such a huge industry, like
yep.
people are always going to go up and down.
But yeah, that is it's such a it's difficult because I've had people ask that too. And and I was reading through some of the notes that you sent over when it came to like mindset and all those things. And I go and I'm thinking in my head, I don't even really 100% have well, I don't have any evidence with, what it is that we've done. I don't have a real like a real process in place of how we do it. It's just like a daily, weekly, monthly conversation that we have with people. Um, I it's kind of hard because when you start talking about mindset, like you can see if your strength is going up. You track that stuff. You can
Right.
see if your mile time is going down, getting better because you'll retest that at some point. You can't necessarily see that your mindset's getting better. I mean, you just you can't. I mean, do you have days where you just have less or weeks you have less bad moods? Or is that because
Yeah.
things are going good in the gym, or is that because, you know what, things are just going good?
Yeah.
Then are you having those weeks where all my moods are just like like now? I mean, the weather starts getting this, it's the doom and gloom thing. I mean, there's all these things that happen, but what's responsible for it?
Right.
Was it
And
because
so
I got
much
a
of
good
that,
workout?
this is where I wanted to go with this is internal motivation. Those people that you've had for a really long time, what's their internal motivation like versus the people who um, come in and do a 6 week or 12 week program or whatever it is that you may be offering. And then maybe they hang around for a little bit longer, but then they say, "Oh, I'm going to let this responsibility creep in and this priority creep in, and before I know it, I'm not coming at all, and I'm not going to." They give up on themselves then because they're letting other priorities in their life come in. So there's something out there with internal motivation. Would you agree?
100%. My wife and I have had countless arguments about when I was in grad school, one of the things that I studied the most was motivation. And I when I got my master's in psychology, the thing that I focused most on was sports psychology side of it. And it was how to motivate athletes. Because back then I was really, really thinking I want to take something into the sports side of life and work with athletes and how is it that we can help them because they're going to have those good days, bad days. How can we keep them grinding to get better as the time goes on? Because when they see those peaks and valleys, it's hard for them, especially if they're an athlete and they're expected to do such a thing,
Right.
right?
Right.
Well, working with the general population, it's there's you don't have to do that as much, but you still have to figure out what it is that drives people to improve, and it's all 100% about who they are built inside. I can offer rewards, and we've done challenges, and we've done these things, and you get responses, you get people to do things because there's going to be you're dangling on the carrot at the end. Well, I'm going to get X for doing Y.
Right. Right.
Well, that is it's just not it's not sustainable. And one of my other coaches, we had actually had the conversation via text about a week ago, and I'd asked her about doing some kind of a nutrition challenge or some kind of a challenge, whatever. And she piped right back and said exactly what I would have said if somebody asked me that. She's like, "Well, that is something that, yeah, it's pretty short term,
Yeah.
So if you're," and I'm like, either
It's
you listen to me or you what I don't know what the hell, but it's exactly true. And I have always been dead set against the challenge mindset. If you have to do that to get yourself to do something, that's great. But if that's what you always rely on is that thing to keep you going,
Oh, for
really all
sure.
you are, it's all external motivation, and you're never You'll never be what I just don't think you'll ever thrive. You won't prosper as a person because you're always waiting on that next thing to
The next
get you going again.
carrot. The
Right.
thing is, like, challenges work for kind of up leveling yourself, I
Yes.
think. Like, okay, this is where I'm at, but I just need something to push me a tiny bit farther. Okay, I'm going to take on this challenge. I'm doing a challenge right now with my students in November because I was feeling that tug to not take as good of care of myself. I'm just like we were talking about before we started the conversation. With so many things, all these balls in the air, it's hard, and it. I have a 3 month old at home, and I'm not giving myself the time that I need to care for myself. So I put this challenge out there to my students. It has incredibly changed the way that I am doing things, because now I'm realizing I got to put this back as a priority, and I feel good because of it. I know it's not going to go away because I'm disciplined to do that. So I think with internal motivation, there's also the discipline side of it, right?
Hmm.
They're kind of two separate things, though. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, yeah, I do agree. Intrinsically, people are just built to do things. So I'll use myself as an example when it comes to that intrinsic versus, the discipline type thing. Is there's a lot of days I just don't want to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm in this gym 14 hours a day, some days. I have all the access in the world to exercise. I have a really good exercise program that I've worked on and developed, and I know it works. I'm super proud of it. But there's some days I just don't want to do it, and so I don't. Right?
Yep.
And that's the discipline side of it. But I also know in the same breath that it's not because I'm going to stop doing it forever. That is just that day. I may not
You're
get to where
listening
it
to
is.
your body and being compassionate with yourself on those days, perhaps.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hate to say, I mean, I'd use this sometimes with my members, my clients is, the excuse thing. We start making excuses and we start finding things to fill our time and yada yada yada, which is true, and we're all guilty of it, and I do it too. So, I mean, I can empathize with them on those in those respects, and that's great, but it doesn't get them anywhere,
Right.
right? Um, but no, back to the intrinsic versus discipline. When I never wanted to open a gym. I mean, full transparency. But this was never going to be a thing. I always thought it'd be cool to have a gym. People would come work out, but to be a gym owner, you could have told me 10 years ago I was going to have a gym, ever. Because that was not never there. But it happened. I never thought it would work because I've always been able to just go work out. I've never had a problem of, oh well, I don't want to do that. I'm just built to work out, and
Yeah.
my wife is the same way now. She didn't used to be, but she is very intrinsically motivated to go do what it is she has to do because that's just what she does, and that's the toward attitude and activity thing that I kind of speak to at some point is you sometimes just do the things because that's just what you do. And I
Yeah.
heard a thing the other day, and this is something that, and it's kind of niche and it could be construed different ways, but it was like people like us do things like this. And I started kind of breaking that down one day when I heard it, and if I can remember where I heard it from, it'd be amazing. But I was either listening to a podcast or it was on something. I can't remember what it was, but it
Right.
was people like us do things like this. And I started thinking about, the culture that I have at KNX. I'm like, you know what? The people that come here do things this way. What I can see from what over the last several years is most people are not afraid to work hard at doing something. Um, I think the people that have come here, they've maybe not been intrinsically motivated in the past, and there may be a small little bit that is starting to say, you know what, if I don't make it to the gym today, I my day's not as good.
Yep.
Or if I go to work and have a shitty day at work, when I go home, it's better when I go to the gym first and then I have a better night at home. You
And
know,
those are the things you have to capitalize on and capture somehow and allow people to connect to so that they start to realize that the work they're doing at the gym or the work they're doing on the yoga mat, I just had this conversation this morning, is directly reflecting the work you're doing outside of the gym, outside of the studio. You know, that's who you start to become as a person, and you start to then form your life around making the choices that are going to support and uplift that feeling good and that those positive interactions in your life.
100%.
And then that discipline of saying, nope, I'm just going to have the integrity to show up today, show up today, show up today, eventually over time, I think, becomes that intrinsic motivation in a way.
It just, you start to become that, and when I used to work in social services, that was one of the things that, and it's amazing, but I used to write programming for people with mental illness. So one of the things we had to do was set them goals, and some of the goals might have been brush their teeth daily.
Yeah.
Um, but when I start to, when you kind of unpack that a little bit, it's like there's no wonder we have such a hard time maybe conforming lifestyle changes, because there's people out there that can't even do the simplest task that you and I disregard it. It's like
Right. We take it for
it's just
granted
what you
because
do.
that's just what you do. And
Right.
that's, I think, kind of how what you're saying, how you are, how I am about our physical health and our mental health and taking care of yourself, whether it's at the gym, practicing yoga, whatever it may be. That's just something that you do. You don't
Yeah.
question it. You just
It's just
do it.
part of it's an integral part of you now, you know. It's
So how
just,
do you
I think
change?
maybe that's, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I think that's one of the things where when it comes to when I speak to my tenured clients and then those that are just coming in or within, the last several months, is the be patient thing. Is
Mm-hmm.
at some point you will, if you stick with this and if you trust me and trust the process enough, it will become just it'll be as automatic as showering and brushing your teeth. It's like
Absolutely.
you do it because it's not because it's what you want to do, it's because it's what you have to and need to do.
Absolutely.
But we have to be careful, I think, of people becoming so reliant on exercise or yoga or spin or whatever it is, as that's the only way they can get through things. Is we don't want that to, because I think that happens to some people.
I think so too. And I think you're right. You can't get stuck on just one thing fixing it all. It's you have to use complementary care, and you have to bring in
Right.
other elements that can work together to get you to where you want to be. You can walk into the studio and begin practicing yoga and be 30 pounds overweight. I'm not going to make a promise that you're going to lose weight. You might lose some. You're going to start refining other things in your life that are going to play into that, but this isn't going to be it all. You may have to get to the point where you want to be, you may have to add in other elements to get there, and then maybe you get to settle into a to something that works for you. But it's the complementary care that all works together to do that.
Right. Yes. Many of us have become so reliant on one thing. We just think it's the one thing. If we don't do it, then well, we're just not whole.
Right.
Um, but you should be. Just like when I speak to somebody when it comes to their fitness or their health or whatever it is, their health markers, if they want those things to change, it's not about your workout really is 10% of that.
Right.
How hard you go in the gym, it doesn't really, that's not going to be the thing that's going to, tip the scales on your A1C. The thing that's going to tip scales on your A1C is, what are you feeding yourself?
Yep.
You start looking those things. Well, the same thing happens with our mindset. If you're feeding yourself full of junk, watching the impeachment hearings right now, and you're a Republican and you're just inundated with that stuff, well, what are you doing? You're just feeding yourself full of a bunch of like not good stuff.
Exactly.
unless that's what you're into. And if that's what you do, that's your thing. I feel
Yeah.
sorry. Uh, no, but it's historical and it has merit. It's an important thing. But if that's what you're consumed with, then you're consuming your mindset with your attitude is going to be either, I don't want to say woe is me or whatever type deal, but it's just going to be different.
Yeah.
If you So we have disagreements in our house about what we watch on TV. Like I like to watch documentaries and educational stuff on Netflix,
Yeah.
and my wife likes to watch Netflix series
Don't
shows.
throw her
And
under the bus.
I already did, but I mean, she does. She's like, let's find another series. I'm like, well, I kind of want to watch this nutrition documentary because it just, or
Yeah, you just
whatever
have
it
different
is.
preferences.
We
Nothing
do.
wrong with that.
No, and I like to have, but I like to like have some kind of education. I want whatever I'm doing to kind of feed me a little bit
Yeah.
if I feel like being educated. I
Yeah.
no, I like to be entertained sometimes too, though. So I mean, there's that. But
Yeah. It's
if Tommy Boy's
balance.
on, I'm going to watch it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. Hey guys, just breaking in quick here because I wanted to let you know that if you haven't headed over to our website, cairnyogawellness.com, do that sometime. There's a lot of great content on there from past blogs that I've written, but also all of these podcasts have show notes that go along with them. They have links to the guests' information, with some of them having special offers or special deals. And they also just remind you of what we talked about within the show. And it's a great place to access all of that. There may also be some free giveaways on the website too, for some of those pages. The other thing I want to remind you of is if you haven't left a rating or review within Apple Podcasts for this podcast or subscribed wherever you listen to podcasts, I would be so grateful if you would take a moment to just click that subscribe button or leave a rating or review. That's how you can help grow the health, harmony, and happiness movement. And I want to also invite you to join the conversation in our Facebook community, Health, Harmony, Happiness Movement. So just go to Facebook, search Health, Harmony, Happiness Movement, and you'll be able to request to join that group and join in the conversation. We'd love to hear from you over there. Let's talk a little bit about attitude just for a little bit more. My parents' big thing, and especially my dad when I was growing up, was attitude is everything. I mean, I heard that a million times from my dad. Like that was literally the thing he had posted all over our house. They like my first iPod, they inscribed it on the back. It was a message that was very prevalent in our household growing up. And it wasn't until probably my adult life that I really started realizing like, oh yeah, it completely is everything. Speak to that with the growth mindset and your take on what growth mindset means to you.
Sure. Yeah, attitude's been a really, really. It's a tough one, um, because as you and I both know, things just don't always work out as we have them,
Right.
planned out. Like I didn't plan my life like some people do, so things just kind of went with it. But it's those. I'm the guy that has a really good attitude until things don't. They're not going the way that you expect them to go. So when I get knocked off my rocker, it's one of those. It's tough. It is tough to like level your head a little bit and be like, you know what? It's going to be okay. I'll just keep moving forward. It's just a minor setback.
Yeah, how do you pull yourself up by your bootstraps and keep going then when that happens?
Um, Usually you just have to reframe that situation. And that is something that I've consciously been working on for a number of months now is this reframing of looking at the situation and being like, okay, but it could have been worse, or could it have been worse, or what could we have done to avoid that? And as opposed to being so reactionary to it, because that always is that's our first thing as a human being is something bad happens, we react to it as in, oh, I can't let that happen to me, or oh, whatever it is, my life is over. This is the worst day ever.
But don't you think that so many of those things, when we react that, when we have things where we could react like that, it helps so much to reframe and to step back. And it's hard to do in the moment, but to step back and look at, you know what, this could very well be a blessing in my life. And this could be the kick in the pants that I need to do this other thing or to grow in this other area of my life.
Yeah, I think 100%. I think there's things that we have, and so when I think about attitude a lot of times, and I always equate a lot of things to mistakes and failure, and what happens when that thing that you didn't work out the way you anticipated it to. You run a new class and nobody shows up to it, or you have very little things happen, or there's not a lot of traction with it. What's the thing you do with it? I did it for about a year. Just recently, I was running a class that just was. I let it go too long, but it was like I have this thing. It's going to happen. Like it's going to take off. Well, after a while, my attitude towards that class was like, okay, I'm paying somebody to do this and nobody's showing up, and I'm going to have to like have the hard conversation that it's just done. We're not going to do it anymore. I did that, and it was kind of amazing. It was the best thing of that was is I did this thing, but it led to what I'm currently doing now.
Ah,
So what I kind of looked at it was I'm piloting this thing, and if this the structure and the flow and the things work, and I get some somewhat of response out of it, it's kind of a trial, a test. So if it doesn't work out, eh, that's not how I went into it. But as it materialized into something, I'm like, you know what? This has got legs. I can make this thing work, and it's doable, and it's something that we can we can run with in an entire for the entire gym. We can make one program instead of having a sub program of something. It didn't happen till it's like in the moment that was not the mindset though. In the moment it was like, well, hell with this thing. This has been the biggest waste of time. What was I thinking? Nobody's going to want to do this. Yeah, whatever. I mean, everything negative you possibly could think about was going through my head. And then take that full circle, and now it's like that got me my brain wrapped around something that we can do.
what was
That
the trigger that made you have that mind shift?
I think I started sprinkling some of the workouts that program into our main class program, and
Ah,
started to see some people like people who didn't know what was going on, but we got such like people were like, I really like that workout. And I'm thinking, what have all these years I've been doing something, and it's like so when you have those things, it's like everything I screwed up the one thing because I didn't do it right, or I was
but not really because look at how
was
much you
I mean I
learned
was
from
targeting
it.
the wrong. It was maybe it was just yeah, timing was just wrong for it maybe, and then now it's come around to this is what it is. So it was looking at it differently
Yeah.
is, and I it's that's one of those the subjective type things of okay, well you take the situation and you like unpack it a little bit and maybe analyze it some and what can I do with it? Maybe what could I have done better with that, or what could I have done? And those are some of the questions that, and I ask myself this most days after I coach a class, most days after I have a client in here, if they have something, things aren't just didn't go well, whatever it is what could we have done better? What did you not like about whatever it was, so that we can fix that and not that negative attitude is it's so easy to have.
What do you do to keep yourself away from it?
Um, you know,
And to stay positive yourself?
I think I don't know. I honestly, I think I always, I think I've gotten to a point now in life to where there's a purpose behind that situation, whatever it was. There was something to be learned by it, and if I can somehow figure out what that might have been, it keeps me because I mean, I'm like everybody. I have days. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's like yesterday, I was having a conversation with, some friends of mine, former owners or former gym members that had moved away. They were in here, and there's some days where I just can't just, is it even worth unlocking the doors?
Mm-hmm.
Should we just keep them locked up because I'm tired of fighting the fight. And then there's some days when I wouldn't trade my life for anything.
Oh, Chris, you're just like speaking my
Everybody,
heart right now because those same thoughts go through my head and it is hard, definitely. But I'm glad to hear, yeah, it's okay to have those emotions and those attitudes, and everybody's going to have them every once in a while.
oh yeah,
So if you have those tactics or techniques that you use to change your attitude or things that help you, then it's a lot better. Wouldn't you agree?
it is. And I think but the hard part about that is trying to look at that situation and like 10x it in the worst possible scenario so that, because, I don't know if you're familiar with Ben Bergeron or not, and he's
Uh-uh.
kind of, okay, well, he does a lot of mindset stuff, and I've got to listen to this guy quite a bit over the years. He's owns a CrossFit gym out in um, CrossFit New England. He's coaches games athletes. I mean, he's one of the guys that he says good things. He's kind of corny on some of the stuff that he does, and he's really like everything that he does. It just like, oh, it's just perfect. Well, we know it's not. Uh, and he's pretty transparent in a lot of things. He just did a TED talk, and I haven't listened to that one yet. So this is where this guy's gone from just being a little gym owner. Now he's on the national stage with certain things and does
Yeah.
a lot of mindset speaking. But he speaks to those situations a lot about looking at it and looking past the now and how can it benefit you in the future. And that's been one of the things that Tara and I have discussed it a lot. We've had some, things have happened, and it's like, well, here's something. Maybe it's just going to be, maybe it was a test. Maybe it was whatever it is. It could have been worse. Maybe it couldn't have been. When our son got into an accident here a couple years ago, that really that brought a lot of stuff that was like, oh, okay, you know what? There are things that are worse out there. Like we could have lost our son in a car accident,
Right.
or we could have had a member cancel.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, perspective. It's so
wow. Well, you know what?
perspective.
Right? It's like, let's look at it this way. We were coming home from something, and he was actually in the back seat of the car. Kobe was. A deer ran into the side of our car or her car last winter,
Mm-hmm.
and Tara immediately just was like, "Oh my goodness, car's ruined, it's totaled, blah blah blah." And I'm like, you know what? We're gonna drive away from it. It's fine. It'll get fixed.
Yeah, and that's why you're great for each other because you can find that and well, and I'm saying this with anybody that you this is how my husband and I are too. Anybody that you can find that relationship with that can keep you level when they feel like it's going to hit the fan, they
Yeah.
bring you back down, and it's not always the same person. It's a balance in the relationship as well. But
Yeah, and
that's the
it's with all
perspective in
those,
those,
right?
yeah. And it's that perspective that can help other people. And I think that's part of your job, part of my job too, as we work with clients and members, is to help them see that perspective.
It
And
is, and it's hard, because there's so much going on with people that and I know and I know sometimes know more than I need to or want to know about personal things with people. But that's
right,
kind of, when you come into this kind of position as a coach or as an instructor or whatever, you also become a therapist. And so
indeed.
I mean, you learn a lot, but I think it's good. I mean, it's so good of being able to take their situations because and I don't always like to use my own, like, oh, I've been there before, I understand type, because that's not always the best approach. But sometimes somebody needs to hear that. They need to know that, you know what, I'm not alone with
Right.
that. But that's that's a whole other conversation when it comes to the whole that.
Right. Right. So, what's the biggest message that you portray to your students in terms of mindset?
Um, I always go back to the patience thing. Is when you get frustrated, you just have to look at where you were, and then look at where you are now. Whatever that means to you. Somebody said the other day, it's like, well, I just did whatever it was and something, and I'm like, well, you showed up, and so that was a win.
Absolutely. And so much of that is present moment awareness and
Right.
just being able to realize that right now is the only time that we actually really have. Everything else is in the past. Everything that's to come could create more anxiety in you. It's good to have those goals and good to have those things that you're working towards, but you really only have right now. So if you can show up for yourself and just be here, that's what you're communicating with them with that patience, right?
Right. Yep. Very well said. That's a good way to say it. Is yeah. I mean, the patience thing, and that sounds so simple. And I mean, when somebody asks you just have to be patient. How many times did your mom and dad tell you that when you were younger?
I know.
And you're like, no, now,
Right.
you've got, remember when my kids were like 2 and 3 years old, and kids have no patience, right?
They have no concept of time, so they have no
Right.
nothing to compare it against.
Right. As adults, we shouldn't have to have that conversation, but we have to because it's
Yeah.
important. And so, but yeah, I go with that, the patience thing and then the consistency, is you just have to you can't just do it once in a while. If that's just really what you're looking for out of like our program, whatever, you just want something to do every once in a while, that's fine. We're setting that program up so that you can do that. But if you want the most benefit out of what it is that you're trying to do, you have to be consistent with whatever it is. And that's your nutrition, your sleep, um, your relationships, all the things that, it's all one big package. But you can't just like reach out every once in a while to people because then if you're initiating conversation with people because you need something or want something, then that lack of consistency. You just become that person. It's like the only time they ever talk to me is when they need something.
Yeah.
It's like it's where my teenage sons are at right now is the
Yeah.
only time they ever talk to mom and dad is when they need something, need money.
Right.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
little
in
bad example,
adamantine
but
yoga, we call that integrity. Like that's the integrity tenet that adamantine yoga teaches students on the mat is the consistency. Show up, be there. Because if you're only showing up part of the time or you're working so hard that you have 3 or 4 days in a row for 2 weeks that you come to the gym or come to the studio and do your thing, and then you get so burnt out and tired or so sore that you stop coming for a week or 2 weeks and then pick it back up, you're going to be right back where you started, and you're not making much for gains. At least you're it's too inconsistent for your body to realize that this is a change that needs to be more long term.
yes,
You know what I mean?
yep. Yeah, the change thing, that's a whole other podcast too when it comes to
I
that whole
know.
mindset. The change thing it is so hard to adopt for a lot of people because we like we like what we like.
Yeah.
We like to do things the way we do things. And, when I change things within the gym or whatever the program, whatever it is, there's always going to be some kind of pushback with that. No, it's not always bad, but sometimes there's a lot of questions of why the change. Well, when we look at it from my perspective to a new, a new client or new member is you have to give yourself time to go through that change. And it, then it all comes back to being patient with the process of the change thing. When you like think about when I used to eat poorly, years ago. Didn't really care much about nutrition. As we have, over the last several years, changed the way we've eaten, it's now just what we do.
Right.
But at the time, it was like this huge undertaking of,
Absolutely.
oh
It's
my
never
goodness,
easy to do that.
no. But I mean, in all good things in time become just the thing.
Habitual. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, but trying to get, our clients to understand that whole thing, to be patient with the change and try not to change too much too quickly. And yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's
It can
so
be
much with,
overwhelming, very overwhelming to people. I get it. You get it. You've seen it.
yeah. And I've gone through it personally, and I'm sure you have too at some
Yeah.
point where I've had to change this, and it's just like, wow, this sucks.
Yeah.
Is it worth it?
Right.
Is it going to be worth it in the long run? And we all know the answer usually is yes. It's just, do I have the fortitude to stick it out for the long haul? Can
Right.
I make it through
Right.
that period? And, um, yeah,
So,
it's hard.
how does all of this, having this positive mindset, teaching about patience and about consistency to your students, how does all of this come together, or has it come together in your own life to cultivate health, harmony, and happiness? Be they thought of as one entire unit in your life, or individually, health, harmony, and happiness? Like, what does that look like? What does that mean to you when I say that?
Um, it's funny you bring that up because I was talking about balance last night with Tara. It was just weird. There is no balance, and that's really hard. So the harmony part is like, we're working on it. We'll get there eventually, but that's not going to happen.
But it's with the flow. And you mentioned that earlier
Yeah,
too. Like, when you find something that works, go with the flow. You had mentioned you were kind of resisting a change, or resisting something, resisting doing something. But then when you did change it, everything started to flow. And you're just adding these little incremental changes, and it
yeah,
flows, and you can flow with life. That's part of the harmony part.
yeah, and that does make sense because it is, and then trying to, the health thing I think speaks to itself when it just comes to health is not one dimensional. And I think too many of us, we think that it's either fitness or it's nutrition or it's
Right.
therapy or yoga. I mean, there's so many facets to your health that we have to have that multidimensional approach to it. That health is your nutrition, it's your sleep, it's your fitness, it's your activity level, whatever it is you do. Those all come together and they equate to your overall health. Um, and that's one of the things I think we look at here, or at least I look at for myself personally, is we try to do all the things. Try to eat well or eat within that 80-20 rule. Exercise daily, or at least 3 or 4 times a week at a minimum. Um, Focus on our sleep, as much as we can, which is almost impossible, but we try to make it a thing. And then the happiness part, the jury's still out on that, but it's it's getting
It's a
better.
journey, Chris, okay? It's a
It is.
journey. So you're seeking it, you're cultivating it in your life.
Here's something that I had heard a while back, and it resonates, and it's really something that I I think we should all pay more attention to, and it is, happiness is not it's not through achievement, it's not through the things that through success or failure or whatever else. It's about quality relationships. It's about the people that you surround yourself with, and that's some of the things that, in a very long longitudinal study that was done over the course of like 80 years. I think Harvard did it. I'd have to Google it. But it was a happiness study.
Yeah.
What is the thing that what were your? It wasn't what you did. It was who was around you. It was the number of quality relationships, and that's something that I think I pride myself on within our gym a little bit, is the number of relationships that have been built, not with myself personally, but with those that are here.
Right. The
And
community that you're building.
yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of friendships that have been made over the years, and that's a good thing,
Absolutely.
and it,
Absolutely.
and it's that's what makes me happy, is to see that.
Cool.
I think
Cool.
maybe.
Well, tell people where they can find you, or how they find you online.
Uh, well, you can always find me on Facebook through the KNX page. Very rarely I'm on my personal page, but if you send me a message on there, I'll always respond. Instagram at KNX_fit, and that is, I'll answer all of my direct messages on that too. If you want to just send me an email, it's cgordon@knxelitefitness.com.
Cool. And the website is knxelitefitness.com, right?
Correct.
I will link to all of this in the show notes so you can get it at your fingertips when you jump over to that page. And thank you so much, Chris, for taking time today, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Enjoy the workout that you've got starting here in any moment.
Any moment. Perfect. Thanks, Kathy.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So there's a little bit more on attitude and mindset. Thanks, Chris. Consider how your attitude truly is everything, and how it plays such a role in not only behavior change, but in your mindset towards anything that you do in life. What you feed your mind is what it will be. So consider that positivity may be a better way to reframe the next time you're experiencing some challenges in life. That's it for today. Thanks for listening, everyone. Head over to cairnyogawellness.com/podcast for the show notes and Chris's contact information. Cheers to more health, harmony, and happiness, and I'll see you next week. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you hear, help us grow this podcast by sharing it with even just one other person. And it would mean so much to me if you would take a moment of your time to write a review. Your comments and feedback are what help me continue to bring you topics and guests that can help you and others on their journey in creating health, harmony, and happiness. Remember to head on over to cairnyogawellness.com to get the show notes and links from today's episode. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Cairn Yoga Wellness, and to continue connecting with more resources that could help you enhance health, harmony, and happiness in your own life, subscribe to this podcast. Thanks again for listening.